Welcome to the beginner's guide to finding a slightly cheaper place to rent in Vancouver. A lot of this advice may seem a little bit obvious, but if you're a first-time renter, especially first-time renter in Vancouver, or you're a millennial and you're new to this whole thing, then these tips are really helpful. These are how I found all of my previous places, my current place. So yeah, keep watching to learn more, and all I ask in exchange for this valuable advice is for you to click like down below, maybe subscribe to my channel, maybe even leave a comment. But anyways, let's get started. So I've been a renter in Vancouver for the past few years of my life. I've rented a few places. They've always been significantly below the, average renter price. And my friends always ask me, Jess, how do you do it? I got a comment on my apartment tour video asking me, how do you find cheap rent? So I'm here to tell you everything I know. I'm not a realtor. I am just a person who rents places in Vancouver. These are all my personal opinions, my personal experience, so keep that in mind. So there's, of course, all these mainstream ways to find a place to rent. There's Facebook Marketplace, which is a really popular one, Craigslist, of course, Zumper. There's a whole lot of websites. I've rented 3 different places so far in my life here in Vancouver, and I didn't find any of these places through any of those websites. Of course, those are definitely a great resource. Definitely check those websites, but they're not the only way to find a place. And keep in mind that these websites have a lot of traffic. So, when I did look at places that were listed on Craigslist, I did do that. There were like 10 other people that wanted the same place. So I'm not going to get into how to do that because that's pretty obvious. Here are some more unconventional ways to find a place. The first one, and this is how I found my first place, is through connections. This is usually the first place you can look to find a great deal. Of course, it requires having connections, having friends, which not all of us may have. So if that's the case, skip to the next point. But I found my first place this way. This might be obvious, you might already be doing this, but definitely join a bunch of Facebook groups. When I was a student at UBC, there were UBC sublet Facebook groups, UBC rental groups. Join all of those, and that's a great place to look if you are looking to sublet, if you're looking for short-term renting, and if you're looking for cheaper deals, roommate situations, all that good stuff. Okay, moving on to number 2, and this is my favorite tip. This is how I found this place. This is how I found my previous place. So, like I said, Craigslist and other websites, they're very mainstream, a lot of traffic, a lot of competition. But a method that requires a bit more effort and, it's a bit more tedious, you really have to be on your game, is Google Maps. So I wanted to live in a specific area. I knew I wanted to live downtown. So on Google Maps, I literally typed in Vancouver rental apartment, and I found a bunch of apartment buildings that popped up on Google Maps when I searched that. And when you click on it, some of them have a website. That website is the rental management company that the building is part of. A lot of these buildings or units are not necessarily listed on Craigslist. Some big ones are like Hollyburn in Vancouver. That's kind of the only one that pops up in my head, but there's a bunch of them scattered around the Google Maps. You can click on those websites, look up the rental units, and contact the property management company directly. I personally prefer management companies. If you're new to the Vancouver renters market, be super careful. There are a lot of scams out there. If a listing looks like it's too good to be true, it definitely is. I'm not saying that all people who own a property and rent it out are scammers, most of them are not. So you'll find a bunch of property management companies through that. You can then explore all their other buildings that they have on their website and go from there. Now, if you want to dig even deeper, you can go on Google Street View or just zoom in on Google Maps and find specific buildings. And some of them, a lot of them, especially older buildings, might not have a website. In that case, either search for the address or building name on Google and see if you can find a phone number, or, and this leads me to the next method, which might seem obvious to many people, but it really works, is physically going around the neighborhood, just like you would, looking through Google Maps, literally walk through the neighborhood, collect phone numbers of different buildings, call them, get yourself on the wait list. There are a lot of older buildings like less tech savvy buildings that don't advertise online. And this is great because that means there's less traffic, less competition. But yeah, you just have to do the good old-fashioned phone call with these guys. I know it's daunting. It's kind of scary, especially for like the millennial generation. We don't like calling people, but this puts you in an advantage because there's probably a lot of millennials out there that would rather find an apartment through Craigslist or a website where they don't have to talk on the phone and would never call. So use that to your advantage. Call them. I promise it's not as scary as it sounds. And this is a great way to find a cheaper spot if you're okay with an older apartment. If there is an option to call rather than email, even if their email is available, always go for the call. That way you can just get it over with, tell them that you're looking to rent, book a time with them to view the place. Emails, a lot of them won't reply or they won't reply fast enough. And that's just because in life, this is like a general life lesson, calling is always more efficient than emailing. Another tip, which may be beyond your control, is if possible, rent during an unpopular month. And unpopular months are typically the winter, so December, January, around that time. Statistically, these are the months that have the least competition. Less people prefer to rent during these times, which is fair enough. December, you're like in holiday mode. You don't want to be moving. It's also colder, rain, all that stuff. But those minor inconveniences actually work out in your advantage. The past two places that I rented at, this one and my last place, I rented it on December 1st, and there was much less competition than if I were to find a place during the summer months. With that said, there's also less availability during these months because less people are moving, but it's worked out for me so far. Prices are typically cheaper during these months because they know less people are looking to rent, and you can find some pretty sweet deals. So to all my fellow millennials and zillennials, is that a thing? Whatever, all my millennials and zillennials out there, call, don't email. I know it's scary, but you can do it. I know I mentioned that Craigslist, is a very mainstream approach to finding a place to rent, but it is an approach that even I use when looking for places. Obviously, it's the hub. You can find the most options there. So you should still look on Craigslist, but on top of that, use the methods that I just talked about. So those are all the tips that I have for you. I hope this was helpful, and I wish you the best of luck in your apartment hunt, and I'll see you guys next time.